Now let's consider the body-spirit connection. For some of you, this sermon is going to get progressively more interesting, and for others, it's getting progressively weirder. So just bear with me, join with me in this space, okay? So there's one pivotal moment that seemed to begin my healing journey, and I shared this story in my sermon last year, and some of you who are my friends have probably heard it over and over again, but I'm going to present a little version for those who weren't with us. 2 months into my pain condition, the pain was debilitating, and I was lying in bed with my pulse pounding in my ears and my tears running down my face. My husband was on a 2-week business trip, and I didn't have a support network beyond him. I was doing everything I needed to do for my 2 kids, but the pain was taking its toll. I thought that if I didn't have people counting on me, I would check out. But I had people who loved me, and I didn't want to do that. So lying there in bed, I looked up and I noticed this book collecting dust on the shelf above my bed, and it was the book The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Well, my brother had given me this book 2 years earlier for Christmas, and I tried reading it then. But in the introduction, Eckhart Tolle talks about how he discovered that he was more than his spinning mind. And at the time I thought, oh man, this guy has suffered from major depression, and he has decreased the activity in his frontal lobes, and now he's activating another part of his brain, possibly the posterior parietal lobe. And so his experiences were suspect and completely categorized, and I put that book back up on the shelf. So I'm really not sure why, but that night when I was lying there, I looked straight at that book and started reading. And when Eckhart Tolle invites the reader to tune in to that chattering mind, you know, that dialogue going on in your head, I knew exactly what he was talking about because my internal voice was incessant and almost always negative. And so once I tuned into it and I concentrated on moving beneath the internal noise, I suddenly felt a fullness in my heart, and like an electric wave, it went from my heart out my arms and legs, out my fingers, out my toes. Well, that was strange. And so then the next night I'm lying in bed, and I actually said, if there is any help out there, now would be the time. And 5 times I felt that electric thing come down from the top of my head, down through my body, out my fingers and out my toes. And I said out loud, okay, I get that I am loved. Now, I'd never been on any type of spiritual quest before, and at this time in my life, I suspected that we were no more than our biology playing out the patterns in our DNA. But that night, something switched for me, and I just knew that if my mind went into depression or if my body was in pain for the rest of my life, there was going to be another part of me. There was another part of me, my spirit, and it wasn't going to die. Now I know this awareness, this chink in my armor, this little bit of openness was the pivotal point for me. For me, when I thought I had all the answers, I had all I was going to get. It was this openness to the idea that there might be more to me and to my life that made it possible to experience it. So 1.5 years into my pain condition, I'm lying on a treatment table in acupuncture, and I did 100 sessions of acupuncture. And while I was there, I felt tingling going up my left leg. And then my head started to move. It felt like my head was moving in this direction, and then it was being pulled gently away from my body. Well, this was a really strange experience, but I allowed it because I'm thinking, well, you've had 15 years of neck and disc injuries. This opens up the posterior foramen, makes room for those nerve roots. Why don't you just let it happen? So I did. And afterwards, I told my acupuncturist what happened, and her eyes got really wide, and I realized, oh, this doesn't happen with everybody probably. So then in the next month, I was lying in bed and my head started moving in this same way. And then every day before I went to sleep or before I woke up, a different part of my body would move. It started with my neck, then it went to my chest, then it went to my low back, then soon my whole body was moving. I went to my doctors and, well, actually, I told my husband, this is either a form of healing or a sign of pathology, and it better not be more pathology. So I showed my doctors what was happening to me, and they said, we don't think it's pathology, Mary Ruth. We've not seen it before, but we think it's the way your body is trying to heal itself, the way it's trying to release maybe even energy. Well, this was true because I found that when I would do these movements throughout my pain condition, my nervous system would relax and my pain levels would drop. My physical therapist told me that she had seen other people move like this in a myofascial release course, which I thought was completely ridiculous before my illness. And so it took me 2 years. But when I was still in some pain, 4 years into my illness, I took my body over there to Sedona and I went to this myofascial release course. And as I have my hand on my partner, her body starts to move just like mine did when it was alone and, in bed. They showed 3 different types of healing movements and they gave it really weird names like unwinding, jiggling, rebounding. But I couldn't deny that my body had moved in all 3 of those ways before I knew that they even existed. That's how things happened with me. I'm so skeptical that everything would happen to me when I was alone before I had heard or read anything about it. And then later someone would say, hey, that's a thing. So these motions continue up to this day, and when they happen, they calm my nervous system and they drop my pain. Well, now here's the weird part. 5 years into my healing, my hands began moving spontaneously in these intricate kind of postures like this. And I would combine these motions with the movement of my full body, and my pain would drop. So several people told me, unwinding might have been done in ancient times. And people may have been watching people unwind, and that's where the yoga poses came from. And when they saw my hands moving, they say, hey, those look just like the mudras. So I've worked with a physical therapist for the past 4 years, and when we met, she reminded me of myself. She was sensitive to emotional issues and naturally intuitive, but she was definitely focused on the body. The first time we worked together, my body started doing that little unwinding thing, and she said, whoa, I think this is some kind of pathology. So a month after this time, about 4 years ago, Nicole was stretching my tight muscles, and it hit me. I have always considered that my body was stiff, inflexible, and a problem, and I told Nicole that. And she said, I'm feeling a huge release in your muscles right now. And just then, I felt this light tingling sensation at the top of my head. I saw a purple spot between my eyes. I felt what I can only describe as big love. And tears were rolling down my face. As those feelings washed over me, Nicole said, the tension in your body just completely released and it's normal. And so in that moment, I experienced a direct connection between my body, mind, and spirit. And Nicole looked at me with big eyes and said, wow, that was really awesome. So Nicole and I have been working together now about 4 years, and we've had many interesting experiences like that. And just recently, she was working on my body, and she said, I feel that through my body too, and it feels great. And I said, hey, Nicole, you think that's electromagnetic energy? And she said, yeah. And I said, do you think it's the Holy Spirit? She goes, absolutely. So this made me think, maybe we're talking about the same phenomenon, but these words are separating us into different camps. Maybe some of our natural ability for healing has been overlooked because it has always been interpreted in a religious context. So I have to admit that when I do unwinding, it looks a little bit like how people move in revivals. And when I do energy work with people, it looks a little bit like laying on of hands. So once I figured out that my body might have something to say, I began to listen and the messages got clear. When your body knows you're listening, it will definitely start to talk more. And so eventually listening to my body would be the major way I connected to my spirit or my intuition or whatever you want to call it. So one night during a rough time in my home, I was standing in my dark living room at 2 in the morning and I was crying. And I thought, I don't know how to proceed. Show me how to move forward. And right then, my toes gripped the ground and I felt like my chest was bursting open. And I thought, oh, I get it. Stand grounded with an open heart.